Well, welcome everyone to what I think is be a really, really interesting session today. One of our river management roundtables. We're here to talk about measuring belonging, participation, and teamwork on your trip or on a project. It could be any project, and an app that has been developed for one particular trip, and a little bit of background on how it works and where it came from. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Furman. I'm the River Training Center coordinator. And a little bit about our roundtables is we have these once a month, usually on the second Tuesday of the month. And these are meant to be virtual conversations where anyone who works on and with rivers is invited to join us. Really hoping that this can facilitate some cool conversations and help build a network of people who can help tackle some common issues together. So thank you all for being here. Uh, just a couple notes. We are recording this and we will post this on the RMS YouTube channel afterwards. There's a previous roundtable that you've missed. You can go see them all there. Um, we love for this to be engaging and we'll have some time for discussion and questions at the end. So you're welcome to come off mute and ask questions at that point. But in the meantime, try to stay on mute just to reduce feedback. You're welcome to put questions in the chat as well. We'll be checking that and getting to those. And yeah, so thank you again for joining us. We're really excited to have Dr. Rodney Dyer here to share a little bit with us. And so I'm going to pass it over to you, Dr. Dyer.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me in this forum. Let's see. You need to stop sharing and I can share now. Let's see. Desktop 2. All right. Let me get everything pulled together. All right. So thank you very much for having me. I am not necessarily a river management individual, and I think the only claim to claim that I have at it is that I know Grace. Hi, Grace. See you here. And my office is right next door to James Vonish. And if you know James Vonish, you know his he is effective in his river advocation. So today I want to talk about some app that we have been developing. And I'm an academic. I'm a population geneticist, and I do a lot of quantitative data analysis. And part of the challenge I think that we have when we, as academics, come to training individuals in field-based or laboratory-based exercises is that we have this notion that we're really good at doing what we do, but we don't ever take any data on that. And one of the challenges I think that we have is that I can, using my vast male intuition, understand how good I am at something, but if I don't actually have data for it, then that makes it a little bit challenging for me to really know if what I'm doing is being effective. I also think that academics are not necessarily trained as well as, let's say, outdoor adventure program people. When we talk about kind of the language and the metrics we use for developing teams and talking and measuring teamwork, understanding participation and belonging, I think we're just kind of often thrown into those kinds of things. And so being a data nerd, I kind of like to have kind of an idea of how can I go about my daily life in a way that I can take quantitative information from what I'm doing to understand if what I'm really doing is being effective. And I'm just going to talk really generally about this. This is not necessarily related to river practices, but just generally when we want to take information and feedback from our students, there's lots of ways we can do that. We use assessments and journals and this kind of stuff. And I'm just going to talk in general about, let's say there's some kind of feedback I'm getting from participants, and it could be your thumb, your temperature, or whatever. And I just kind of think of it as like an axis of inference that we get from a data perspective. Literally, this is like a column of numbers in some CSV file that I like to analyze. And so if there's some metric that I'm looking at, there's all different kinds of things I can do. For example, here's one I'm going to use in this example of information flow. So early in the learning process, a participant in a class will have a lot of information flowing from the instructor to the student. But when an individual starts to understand and master a topic, then that information can actually go from the student out. And so they begin applying it to other things. They begin to see how, well, this, in this course I took on event planning, I understood some of this teamwork stuff, but I'm applying it in this new context over here. And so there's a net flow of information out. And so that could be something that you're looking at quantifying to understand how well students are mastering something. There could be other stuff. It could be overwhelmed. It could be their level of comfort with the topic. A lot of times an individual will start with some kind of a neutral understanding of a topic. And as soon as they get into it, then they actually become more overwhelmed. And then as they work through it, they feel more empowered. And there could be any number of these axes that we can look at. And I want to use these too, because it's kind of a good idea to think about plotting these. And this is kind of how we led intellectually to get where we are right now. And so hypothetically, if you were at some course that I was doing, whether it's in the field or whatever, that I may be able to apply some tool and provide some information, let's say a lecture. And from the student's perspective, that actually would be an information flow to the students. And once they get that first lecture in my class, they might feel a little bit less empowered and a little bit overwhelmed. I didn't realize that this is going to be as much as that. And so I could kind of represent that by the direction and length of this vector for this lecture thing. Now, often, and we've seen this so many times, is that when an individual, I'll use myself included, when I don't know very much about a topic, I'm often confident in my knowledge, the whole Dunning-Kruger effect. And so I often see that when I give a lecture and then I do some activity, some kind of assessment, I actually results in the students becoming even more overwhelmed. I thought I knew it, but I really didn't, right? And so if I'm trying to think about kind of the consequence of doing an assessment following a block of lecture early in the course, it actually may have this down and to the left kind of pattern in this two-dimensional space. And really, we want everything to be going up and to the right? We want everyone to be empowered and be able to apply their data outside. And then, as we go through the class, maybe there's an activity that changes them, there's another lecture, there's another assessment, etc. And so the notion for us thinking about this is to say, well, if I have some tool, let's say it's an assessment or an activity, how do I know it's being effective? And how can I understand whether it's as effective as another tool? Is a ropes course, as effective at building kind of confidence as, let's say, working on pivot turns or something like that? And just throwing some terms out here that might be relevant. And so unless we're actually going to take data on these kind of things, we can't just kind of use our intuition on that. And so really, we were thinking in ways, are there ways that we could understand kind of the magnitude of these vectors and how they move in whatever the space is that we're going to use it? And can we use it to actually feedback for ourselves so that we can produce more effective teaching strategies? And that's kind of how we got to where we are on this particular app. Now, this is being done in the context of Footprints on the James. This is a course that's been offered at VCU since 2014. It's been really successful. And it uses the James River, if you're not familiar with it, as a vector to explore kind of natural history and cultural history and a whole suite, economics and a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. And it's usually taught for 3 to 4 weeks in the summer, using the whole James River as kind of this gradient on which we apply various learning stuff. And there's been a ton of really good kind of experiences. And I really kind of think it's one of the best things that I think we offer to our students to get out there and kind of integrate all of the work that we do for our environmental studies students and biology students as well. Okay, so this year we're using it, and this app was developed essentially in the springs to be deployed as a first beta test for this class. And really, what we're interested in this class, this axes that we're looking at, is we're interested in understanding belonging. How does a student have the ability of belonging? Does that evolve through the course of the class? Is this a temporal kind of development, or are there specific activities that help kind of positively upregulate, or maybe some activities that may downwardly regulate their sense of belonging? So that's one axis. Participation, the involvement of each team member as a group for the same thing, and teamwork. So we kind of are trying to figure out how to develop a vocabulary and a set of metrics to evaluate how well we're doing at building teams. And we're looking at this kind of individually as, it's not uncommon for a journaling kind of approach to be used. We're using this as a daily kind of journal so that students can provide some feedback on these 3 different parameters, as well as kind of open verbiage on and putting kind of free-form text in there. And then we can also classify entries based upon a particular activity, a ropes course or some other kind of activity that we put together. So that's kind of we have 3 axes, plus we have some free-form text. And a lot of times when I've been working with journaling and field-based exercises, at the end, I will get this big stack of journals, and I will go through them and apply some metric and hopefully look at stuff. Because this is in an app, we can apply some kind of more neutral sentiment analysis and more kind of linguistic analyses to what is being provided in those entries on the verbal part. And so realistically, we have belonging, participation, and teamwork, and then we also have sentiment that's derived from that free-form information. So far, so good? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the app design footprints in the James. Now, this has been created for this particular thing, but we don't necessarily, if these are the kinds of things that are important to more people, I think it could be applied in other contexts. And so I went to my OpenAI ChatGPT and I said, give me some more acronyms for what an app called FOTJ could be that's based upon field and teamwork. And I think the one that came up was Fellowship of the Journey, which I thought was a good one. So who knows what it is. But here's our app design. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make it a quick interface. We wanted to make it something that has a very low barrier to entry. We don't want it to be a pain to get to. And so we've kind of taken an idea of individual kind of journal entries. Now, each one of these, the default data are loaded in our 4 entries from Charles Darwin's trips through the Galapagos in 1835. You can see there's the date's a little bit back, a little bit historical. Now, each entry itself is a longer form text, and it can be as long as you want. And for each entry, each time you make an entry, you actually quantify belonging, participation, and teamwork. And we kind of carry this blue, green, and orange motif. And at the top of each entry, this is kind of just a horizontal scale with neutral being in the middle and all the way positive being on the right and all the way negative being on the left. And so these are data that says Charles Darwin thought that belonging was positive, not quite, a little bit more participation, and then he was even feeling really pretty good about teamwork on October 14th, 1835. I just made it. These are random data I threw in there. So that's kind of the general interface for it. When you put in a new input, here's what pops up when you hit that blue plus button. There's just 3 sliders, from all the way negative to all the way positive, and neutral in the middle for belonging, participation, and teamwork. And then you could decide whether it's a regular journal entry or that's associated with some activity. And then you could plop in the comment there, and you can use the speaker, and it does auto, text to audible to text and all that kind of stuff. And then you could add it to it. You can see behind my little thing here, it does take latitude and longitude. We're kind of interested to see, as the class goes down the James River, is there a net change in any of these parameters? We can look at it spatially and make maps out of it as well. The data is all kept on device. And one of the things that we were really interested in doing is trying to have it so that we are often in the field in locations where there's no cell service or Wi-Fi. And so the data are kept on the device and they belong to the student. And we'll come back to that little anonymity in a second. But each individual can go through and look at and review their individual data, either on these graphs here, either as the number of times they've done it, or they can hit the little clock button and it makes the x-axis time etc. So I also do the sentiment analysis. And so what that does is it goes through and it analyzes the linguistic structure of the free-form comments. And it comes back with a linguistic sentiment that goes from +1, which is all the way positive, to -1, which is all the way negative. It appears the verbiage used in 1835 by Charles Darwin was not neutral. It was somewhat negative, but, you know, I'm not sure that my linguistic stuff is built for 1835 English English language, so that might be a bias on that part. Since we do actually keep spatial coordinates for each, we also have a map interface, so you can get a kind of an idea of the relative values of belonging, participation, and teamwork at each location. I think it might be helpful for me to put arrows from temporal arrows from the first to the second, so you can kind of follow that around. We haven't really done that, but that's there. So you can see the spatial components to it as well. Now, anonymity is obviously an important thing. What we've done is for the application, there's a anonymous participant ID that's used when data are pushed back to the provider, and it can be reset at any time. I would hope that participants wouldn't reset this during a single field exercise, because we would like to see, while we don't know who it is, a progress of an individual going through time or through space. A lot of the analysis stuff that we do, we end up kind of subtracting out individual means. So everyone's kind of relative to their mean. I mean, Risa may actually be a much more positive person for me than I am. So she may always be up in the much more towards the pluses, and I may be a little more ER and a little bit to the later. And so by subtracting the individual means by participant allows me to standardize those and look for delta to change through time or space. If someone were to change that, then I can't actually do that, but whatever, it's not up to my case. Export to the coordinator, that kind of sits that out there, and then you can erase all your data and set it back to 0 as well. And so that's kind of the basic structure that we had put together kind of quickly to get this app going for this particular class. Now, this is on iOS and iPad OS. We do use iPads quite a bit in the field for iNaturalist, for bird calls, this kind of stuff. It's currently free, and it's currently on the App Store, and you can download it and use it to your heart's content. We're using it this first pass on this Footprints of the James class. Here's some individuals in the lower James. Dr. Vanish publishes a voluminous picture repository of all these. I think he has 30 or 40,000 images up there. If you're interested in poking your head in and seeing what they're up to, you can see them there. Now, we do realize that having an app that focuses on belonging, participation, and teamwork that's only on the iOS platform may be a little restricting, and we're working on that. I'll come back to that in a second. Here's some data that we have harvested from the first couple days of this particular class. Here's on the y-axis, here's the belonging scores, and each color is a particular participant ID. And so it may be that pink one that stops before May 30th, and then the other one picks up after that. That individual may have reset their participant ID or not done anything the first 3 days. I don't know. I can't tell that. But it kind of gives you an idea, say, in terms of belonging, how this progresses through a field experience. Now, it may be the up and to the right kind of trend is kind of the generic. As long as you're there and you're taking part of it, you're expecting to see kind of this background kind of positive increase in terms of an individual's reported belonging. So this may be kind of more kind of general things that we think if you show up and you put your backside in the kayak, you're going to actually produce an increase in belonging across the class. Now, what we're interested in doing is seeing kind of as we kind of insert activities in there, do we have differential parts to that? Are these asymptotic, et cetera? This individual here that is all kind of horizontal on the 0, they just went 1 for everything throughout the whole time. They love it. Everything's going on. So there's no variation, right? So I don't have any, there's no change in them. It could be 0, it could be, whatever. So we need to be careful of how we interpret these preliminary data, and obviously we don't have a lot for analysis yet. Here it is for participation. We can see, there's a couple places where an individual's participation went down and then back up, and some ups and then down and then back up, a hiccup in terms of their feeling they're able to participate. This is kind of an interesting way for us to understand, like, if as a facilitator, maybe I'm not aware that there's something that happened where there was more of a clash in the class and participation went down or whatever. Being able to look at kind of this anonymous data might allow me to not understand the context or whatever, but maybe try to readdress some of these issues going forward by looking at these data as we go. This is teamwork. Everyone's, some people seem to be going up. We're going to try not to interpret these first couple data points, but you can pull that together. Here's a sentiment analysis. This is kind of interesting looking at it. We're going to need some more data, same kind of thing. I've standardized it as well through time. And so some people there might have been an event around May 30th where that individual's sentiment for whatever was going on. You could correlate that, I suppose, with weather events. It might have been a thunderstorm or something, and kind of look at it like that. So we have these individual axes, and if you're a statistician or do a lot of data analysis, then you could actually come in and take all of these data and do a principal component analysis and see the relative importance of, let's say, belonging, participation, and teamwork in describing the variation that you have, or the sentiment and kind of how they look at. If you're not familiar with a principal component analysis, raise your hand. Anybody? Everyone's good? Lisa, you're not? Okay, so let's see if I get Grace to describe it for us. So she took my stats class. Sorry, Grace. No, I'm not going to do that. Let me go ahead and share this. So essentially what this is a simple way. If we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 dimensions of data, however many axes we have, it's a way for us to reduce the number of data points and get some inferences on their relative importance. Here's an example I use in teaching where I have 2 axes, an X and a Y, and I have some data plotted there. And so what a principal component, principal coordinate analysis does is it tries to kind of look at the distribution. If I project all my data onto the Y-axis, here's kind of the histogram of the data. And if I project all my data on this X-axis, here's kind of a histogram of their density. And what it does, it tries to say, can I rotate the axes in a way that makes those distributions bigger? And so going from the original X and Y coordinates to the new ones by these dotted red lines here, allow this first axis to be wider, explains more variation than the original one. And so what is it a way? It's just a way to redo your coordinate space so that you can order it and say, my first axis has most of my variation, my second one has the next to most, and they're all independent of each other. But if you do it by standardizing your data, the loadings, the way that these individual data contribute to this new axis, can tell you their relative importance. So let me go back over here and kind of walk that through. So in this one, my first axis here on the X-axis explains 42% of all the variation we see. So out of all the variation of all the student responses and everything we took, 42% of it can be explained by the coordinate on this axis. And that coordinate is defined by the relative contributions of belonging, participation, and teamwork in these relative amounts. And so you can see that belonging is 0.44, participation is 0.68, and teamwork is 0.58. And so where this is important to me is that it says for me that belonging has a smaller impact on this first main most important axis than participation. And if belonging is something I'm really interested in trying to upregulate, then, oh, I'm sorry, was I not showing that? Sorry about that. Sorry. You can see the axis now. We're good. Okay. Belonging is 0.44, participation 6.8, and teamwork's 5.8. And so to me, it says that belonging is contributing less than participation for this first main axis of variation. And so if this is something that I want to make sure I want to increase and I want to increase the variation in belonging to raise it up, maybe I need to go back and think, okay, throughout as I continue through this set of exercises, I may need to emphasize things that upregulate kind of a sense of belonging or focus on that, not so much as participation. And so this is a way for us to look at those relative contributions, and we don't have to get into the difficult statistics. Cool. Sorry about that. Okay, so back to the whole thing about having an app on belonging when some people may not actually be able to use the app unless they're using an iPad. I'm working to try to be able to provide a parity equivalent version for the Android platform. I'm not an Android developer, so I'm working on that. We're working with some people in New Zealand, and they would like to have that as well. So eventually, when this gets to being a release level type thing, I'm sure we will be able to have feature parity on both. There's a couple challenges. What we'd like to do is be able to, if we're in the field and we don't have internet or cell, being able to, as a let's say a facilitator, I would like to be able to get all the information from the students in a way that's anonymous. And there are some abilities to do that on one platform that may be more challenging on another platform, or it just may represent kind of my ignorance in that. So we're looking at kind of trying to figure out how to do that. But it would be really nice to have, a temperature or kind of immediate feedback without having kind of any internet or Wi-Fi service. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about, so the footprints in the James is kind of it's a very specific kind of thing of a more general tool. The more general tool I've been working on is what we call EcoConnect, of which you could think of the footprints in the James as being like one custom learning objective with 3 or 4 assessment issues to it. But if I teach a class, I may have several modules with several learning objectives, et cetera. And so this is kind of a more general tool that I'm working on to put together, where if belonging, teamwork, and participation are not your jam, and you're interested in some other axes and some other learning objective, this tool will allow you to develop those things de novo and to develop whatever they are. And this is not available publicly right now, but although I'm working. When I say we, I'm working on it. This is not my academic job, so this is a little stuff I do afterwards. And in general, it kind of fits into this paradigm here. When I'm developing a course, I may have 1, 2, 3, or 4 different course learning outcomes that I'm assuming that the students are going to be able to do as part of kind of the process of learning. I'm a big proponent for backwards design in developing course content. And so typically what we do is we start with these learning outcomes. Let's say that footprints in the James is a single learning outcome, and it's got 3 or 4 different assessments associated with it. In a bigger course, you may have several different kind of learning modules that contribute to these learning outcomes, and then individual assessment items that map onto those modules. And so for us to understand curriculum-wise at a course level or even above, this actually started for me at the curricular level, designing programs and degree programs, is to be able to understand kind of how we can map the individual assessments we do, their relative importance, onto these module and course level learning outcomes, and get some data on how all that works. And so that's kind of how that all fits together. EcoConnect allows you to define kind of all these course level outcomes, module objectives underneath them with individual assessments, and put them together in any way you'd like. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's all I got. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Well, thanks, Dr. Dyer. Angie, if we could go back to our slides, we'll just go through a couple and then encourage. Let's go through those and then just leave it and then go back to questions, because I have questions even if other people don't have questions. So we appreciate. Here are some other pictures from footprints on the James, and these were just taken last week or so. This is probably something Grace can identify with. This is a class that she went through. But while folks are listening to maybe a few more questions, we have a survey that we would love for you to take, because this is Oh, also, we'll post this on our YouTube channel tomorrow, and there are lots of, I don't know, Angie, you can tell us how many videos we have. You mentioned it recently, it's a lot.
Like 240 or something like that.
Right, all on demand from the last several years. So please visit often. And then let's see, we can put this survey. These are the folks who are running this Footprints on the James class right now. They're out on the water. And there's the survey. We'd appreciate your feedback. It's really quick, but it will help us grow our program and improve next time. And we have a couple of programs coming up.
Yeah, we've got tomorrow our last webinar in our Wild and Scenic series on when outstandingly remarkable values change. And then also we've got some fun chapter trips coming up in the Northwest on the Nooksack in the Middle Fork of the Flathead River. And then we're also our next roundtable is going to be on July 9th, and we're going to be looking at water trail topics. We've just recently sent out a survey today, so you might have seen that in your inboxes related to water trails and water trail management. So hope to see you all there.
Well, thanks, Angie. So maybe if we could just go back to oh, sorry.
No, yeah.
It's just a thank you to everyone. But we have plenty of time and would love to hear what you guys in the audience, guys and gals, think of this idea. If you could imagine, I think even using the Footprints on the James app just as it is for what you do, and then how you might apply the idea of an app like this in, if you're not an instructor and you don't have a multi-day on the river course that you're working on, how you might use it someplace else. I thought it was, I can imagine having been in classes, group settings, as an instructor a little bit that I've done, when I've seen people I know would like to say more, but they're too shy, they're mad, they're bummed out, they're about to leave, they just got there and they're embarrassed, they're late, whatever it is that, and you can't tell especially if you don't know them, really what they're feeling. And this would be just another way to tap into the unspoken in a way that I hadn't seen before. I thought it was so cool. So anyone have questions, you can, the group is so intimate here. Feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up. If we get too crazy, we could raise hands, but I would say we can just unmute yourself and please ask a question.
I don't even have to raise my hand, Risa. Yeah, amazing. Great presentation. My observation is very similar to what Risa just said. Seems like there would be a lot of application to group dynamics in general. I'm not from an academic background. I'm a designer with the National Park Service, but I'm also been in a lot of group settings, from co-instructing swiftwater rescue courses to whatever, where, like Risa said, you might not might have a feel like something's off, but you really don't know what's happening with those participants. Maybe their dry suit has a leak. I don't know, but something like this might be able to track it. I guess that goes to the question of, do you think is that dangerous to think, oh, this app could help us do that in terms of, I know it was probably designed just for this student group on the James, but could it apply to those other situations, and would it be worth trying?
I think we chose these 3 parameters: belonging, participation, and teamwork, because that's what James was interested in doing. For me, I'm just a tool builder, and so I'm trying to make a tool that can be applied in a broad range of situations. And one may not be interested in those specific things, but be interested in having something else. And whether they are a continuous kind of quantified thing like we did from all the way negative to all the way positive, or binary, or a Likert, an ABCD kind of thing, or thumb up, thumb down, kind of stuff. I think creating a framework that the practitioner can define what's important enough for them and put that together and then deploy it, I think is kind of is the bigger term kind of idea. For the FOTJ one, these three parameters seem to be what they were interested in, and we're going to iterate and see if those are if that's exactly what we want to use after we look at some data and get some inferences from it. They may be too overlapping. We may need to differentiate an individual kind of self and a team thing separate. But we just want to get something together so we can start doing this process and start creating a dialogue and a vocabulary on how we would think about measuring these kinds of things. What we don't want to do is we don't want to measure everyone all the time, right? It becomes too intrusive. So we need to do something that's, it'd be great. It's on my app. It's on my watch, right? And so on my watch, I just do my little sliders, and that's no big deal, and I can talk into it. So the more minimal we can make it, and the easier we can make the deploy, and have it maybe even be more interactive. If we're doing a training and you're leading something, maybe you ask everyone for feedback right now. Whereas the next day I'm leading a training and I'm gonna ask everyone for feedback right now, right? And so if we could turn it into kind of an assessment kind of quick debrief kind of tool, as well as kind of some other situations where we think that something like this might be of interest for us.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Grace, I have a question for you. You probably took footprints on the James. Do you think this would have been helpful, pain, annoying, really wonderful if you had it while you were doing your trip? Because it's a long trip, and I could see where your scores might, I don't know, they might change over time, or but
Mhm.
it's such an intensive course where you're living with this big group of people doing all sorts of things that might be unfamiliar. I'd love to have your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just helping out as a trip leader for the class. And so I was able to tag along for maybe like a third of it. But the students had to keep a journal for the app. So this is 2 years ago. So they were already kind of like self-reporting, like debriefing on their own, and the journals were taken for a grade and that kind of stuff. So I almost think that the app would be more convenient, and it not be a thing of like, okay, we need to sit down and journal now, and it be kind of more like self-directed. So yeah, and I like that this introduces some quantitative metrics, because the journal was sometimes just like stream of consciousness, like this is a sufferfest, or I'm having the best time of my life, and not necessarily hitting on, do I feel a sense of belonging? Do I feel like everyone's participating? Do I feel a sense of teamwork? But yeah, I would be interested in seeing how this could apply to day trips in a more commercial setting. Because right now I'm working at a rafting company in Richmond, and we don't really have a way of getting like feedback from clients. So I could see how this could be a tool that could be used to, see how safe people felt, see how, prepared their guide was, how happy they were with all of the extra amenities and the gear and that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I was thinking as Dr. Dye was going through this presentation.
Seems like if you were to use it in that kind of a setting, because you're interacting with customers like for 4 hours, max 3 hours, maybe a day. So you don't know them, you're not gonna be cooking with them and putting up tents and stuff like that, so you don't get that level of familiarity. So it'd almost be more important for it to be really convenient, like,
Mhm.
because they're not gonna sit down and do homework for you for 20 minutes after they're done in the parking lot.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but if you could, as a way to provide feedback, that'd be
Mhm.
anyone else have any, I don't know, any impressions on how this might apply to what you do, or any questions about how it works?
Well, I just downloaded the app, and sorry, I'm off video. My bandwidth is all over the place
You have
today.
to talk louder, Darren.
Huh, maybe that's bandwidth too. Um, it's windy, so I think my bandwidth goes down. I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but I'm gonna say that there probably is. I think that this has some applicability, like I said, in lots of situations. So with the Park Service, we have agreements with universities, and I'm working with Colorado State University, their landscape architecture program, to bring them out to real live projects. They work with us. So even those measures that you have in the app, which I just downloaded, I think, it'd be interesting just to try that and just to see where students are checking in or out. And then it'd be a better measure of that, other than me like wondering, like, this person hasn't said a word. Maybe they're just super shy. That's that maybe the facilitator in me trying to tease that out of folks. So anyway, I think I'm going to try that with one of my next field trips.
Absolutely. Let me know if how it works for you and how it performs. You could swipe left on those entries from Darwin, and they'll just remove them.
Oh, okay, great. Whole negative Darwin. Yeah, get him out of there.
As an evolutionary biologist, perhaps swiping left on Charles Darwin's not a good idea, but
Yeah, right. That is not. Oh, that's a
No, I think it would be great to get that, because it would particularly, Darren, if you tried it just the way it is. So FOTJ just becomes the name of the app, and it's just the acronym. Take the river, that it was a river class out of there. Because I think, to me, the categories could be used as they are, and for the type of purpose that Dr. Vanish wanted to measure. That I think there are many group settings where those three aspects of how folks are feeling are important. Is it perfect? I don't know. But as long as we're experimenting here, I think it could be used. And
absolutely. Yeah, it's a quick temperature of the group. So I think that's great.
I have a question. So does the data that is collected, so if other people are using it beyond just on the James, does that data that they collect potentially come back to y'all's
so no,
database?
there's no data that comes to us. It's all on device. All the sentiment analysis, all that kind of stuff, the linguistic stuff's all on device. We wanted to make sure that I don't want to have to pay for servers and all this kind of stuff, right? When you export it to someone, it essentially spits it out as a CSV file, and you can dump it into an anonymous Dropbox. I do actually have I didn't show this particular part of it. Let me go ahead and share this this part here. I do have an app that I've made called Backflow that I use for when I'm designing a course, that I could take these objectives, put these modules together, do these assessments and stuff. And essentially what the footprints of the James is like one objective with 4 assessments, a free form text and 3 numerical values. When I'm making a class, this app that I use here for developing course content, you could just export that information out. And then it comes back into this as anonymous. And so this is kind of the framework. If you are an instructor and you want to do kind of analyses and all that kind of stuff, all that analysis is kind of in this context. Right now, I just have it going as a CSV file where you could just load it up and analyze it however you like, and according to your ability. I haven't released kind of this more course level one. I think by fall I need to have it for data literacy, Grace. Hopefully it'll be up for that, because it also writes syllabuses for you, so that's always a nice thing. But yeah, no. So right now nothing's done. There's no servers or anything like that that exist. It's all just text files. I'm imagining once we kind of standardize on kind of the design parameters, having that in-field data exchange between the participants and maybe someone facilitating something will all be kind of in text, anonymized in real space, and have nothing for it. Now, I understand a lot of people would like, well, I would like to understand some information about the participant and how they're doing that kind of stuff. I think it's up to the participant in the class to associate that unique anonymous ID with an individual if you want to start getting into demographic information and this kind of stuff for more quantitative analysis. But right now, I just wanted to make it as anonymous as possible.
So you'd want to dump it into some box or something. You don't want to email it to your leader.
Yeah,
because then
yeah.
They know
So
who it came from. Right.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we just have an anonymous Dropbox. They're just dropped in there, and you can take a look at it. I think eventually it might be kind of nice to have maybe a web interface to deploy kind of objectives and assessments and collect them outside of the way, whatever. But we're not at that point yet.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm thinking about it. It's like I'm an avid journaler, and I take quantitative metrics in my written hand journals. Being able to do this for myself, I'd just be more interested in actually maybe doing these kinds of things for my own kind of quantified self purposes, that kind of stuff as well, outside the context of teaching a field class.
Any other questions from the audience that we haven't heard? Either you've overwhelmed us or we understand everything that you just said.
I'm more than happy to chat later. Darren, if you want to deploy it and talk about kind of that kind of stuff, we're waiting until this course is done before we make any changes to it going forward. We want to make sure this class has all the same features on it. But I'm more than happy to chat with anyone about seeing if we could fit into what they're interested in deploying it. So let me know.
The footprints on the James, like we were saying, they are out on the trip now. When will they be back? I think they're
Another week and a half, I think.
Right, so it's a really long class. If there are no questions, I think we can wrap for the day, and we'll wait another second. But Rodney, thank you so much for your time. And
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really interesting. Oh yeah, go ahead, Darren. Oh.
I
Darren.
just tried to see if
he's
the raise hand button even really works, because I usually don't use it. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate this. It's a very interesting look and approach. I think it's great to broaden horizons. The old school paper forms don't always capture everything we need to, so this is a great way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Have a good day. Thanks for attending our roundtable.
Yeah.
Thank you.